Hostage, a Todd Mills mystery, book 3 in the series. Arthur R.D. Zimmerman, publisher, Scribble Pub. Narrator, Eric Ost. Chapter 16. Channel 10 was thrilled. Todd Mills, well, he was a god. He'd already told his story on the 5 p.m. local news, and now he was on the national news, live with Dan Rather, perched atop a WLAK TV van, which stood only feet away, was a mini satellite connecting Todd via the stars to the preeminent television anchor. And to repeat, Dan, in the almost 6 hours since 3 self-described AIDS activists abducted Congressman Johnny Clarendon, there has been virtually no news as to his fate. His kidnappers have yet to make any demands whatsoever, and as far as I know, the FBI and the police have virtually no leads, reported Todd, holding a stick mic and looking straight into the camera as he stood in front of the large brick building where it had all taken place. Otherwise, the only other person known to be injured thus far, WTCN TV reporter Cindy Wilson, remains unconscious but in stable condition at Hennepin County Medical Center. It was the lead story, not just in the Twin Cities, not just in the United States, but perhaps in the Western world, and Todd was right in the eye of it, being sucked up and picked apart by not only the police and the FBI, but the hordes of journalists who were descending upon Minneapolis as not only one of the top journalists in the region, but as both a victim and a witness to the abduction. Todd was being all but consumed. What was it like? How many of them were there? Did you get any sense of what they wanted? Did you fear for your life? Was there really a fire? What do you think they'll do to Congressman Clarendon? All afternoon he'd gone over and over it. First with the authorities, then with his colleagues, the piranha-like media. Todd, said Rather, his voice coming in clearly through the earpiece lodged discreetly in Todd's right ear. As I understand it, you had just started an exclusive interview with Congressman Clarendon moments before the assailants set off the smoke bomb and burst into the room. That's absolutely correct, Dan, replied Todd, looking squarely into Bradley's camera. The congressman concluded his round-table luncheon, left the main dining room of Jerome's, and came into the side dining room where we had set up our camera and lights. Todd's voice was perfect. He looked fabulous. Just right for the situation, dressed in jeans, a crisp shirt, a Ralph Lauren cotton jacket, all clothes that someone at Channel 10 had darted out and purchased that afternoon at Dayton's, the Behemoth department store, because Todd hadn't been able to return home to change. The image was not of a prepped and preened reporter, but of a correspondent caught right in the middle of a maelstrom. Standing there, the lights of Bradley's cameras glaring in his eyes, a sidewalk crowd, not to mention the entire country, watching Todd, only hoped no one sensed how utterly exhausted he was. He'd been cranked on high all afternoon, telling, recounting, trying to recall every detail, and he now struggled to appear calm, insightful, sincere. Rather continued, saying, "Can you tell us what Mr. Clarendon was like in those moments before he was kidnapped? Did he have any intimation whatsoever of any danger?" I'm quite sure that the congressman didn't suspect a thing. He'd had a very successful book signing this morning, a stellar luncheon which was at $5,000 a plate, attended by the region's top executives and completely sold out, and he appeared quite animated and pleased. However, after the incident in San Francisco when some AIDS activists hurled a bucket of blood on him, he did have a bodyguard assigned to him. Mind you, had Mr. Clarendon already announced his bid for the presidency of the United States, which so many expect him to do, within the next month, he would have had Secret Service protection. That, however, wasn't the case. Of course not. He was ostensibly on a private tour promoting his book. That's correct. In your opinion, just how dangerous is this situation? I would say extremely, ventured Todd. Keep in mind that the kidnappers stated that they are in the last stages of a terminal illness and that they know they are dying. Consequently, that means they have almost nothing to lose. A frightening thought, Rather shook his head. So far, all the top national AIDS organizations have issued statements deploring today's event. What has been the reaction there in Minneapolis? Complete and total outrage. In fact, The Minnesota AIDS Coalition, the largest local AIDS group, has condemned the abduction and will be holding a meeting tonight to help its staff and volunteers deal with the trauma of the situation. Todd's mind started whizzing. Do I leave it at this? In a moment of a mere second or two, his mind ran like a supercomputer and quickly came to one quick, firm conclusion. No, this is too important for me and others like me. Go on, just jump. Dan, began Todd, I'd also like to add that in the moments before the chaos broke loose, I personally found Mr. Clareton quite aggressive and, to be perfectly frank, rather hostile to the cause that his abductors claimed to represent. Really? Came the surprised reply. In what way? Before we got started, he lambasted in a most derogatory manner all homosexuals and everyone with AIDS. Go on, just say it, he thought, staring into the lens. Out yourself to the universe. He came striding into the room where I was to interview him and demanded to know who was gay. When I identified myself as a gay person, but assured him that that had nothing to do with our interview and that in fact my sexuality was none of his business, he launched into a tirade of bigotry and vitriol. I see, said rather, unable to hide his own amazement. Can you be specific, Todd? Okay, thought Todd, now it's time for a little poker. And if you play it right, this is going to draw a mountain of attention. So hint it, but hold it. Just tell him there's some great dirt coming. Soon. But keep him waiting. Channel 10 will wet its pants with glee. I don't think, Dan, it would be particularly appropriate for me to go into it at this time. Absolutely. And I'm sure we'll be hearing more from you in the near future. Thank you, concluded rather. That was Todd Mills reporting from our Minneapolis-St. Paul affiliate, WLAK-TV, on the fate of Congressman Johnny Clareton, who was kidnapped earlier this afternoon by a radical group of AIDS activists. Todd stood quite still, staring into the camera until there was a fuzzy snapping sound. An instant later, the connection was severed, and there was nothing. And Todd lowered his stick mic, then pulled the clear earpiece from his ear. He took a deep breath, glanced over at the crowd gathered behind the barrier. He suddenly felt as if he'd walked face first into this wall, an invisible but completely solid one. Exhausted, he made his way over to Bradley and asked, Was that okay? Did I make sense? Great. Perfect, Bradley replied, adjusting a few things on his camera. How about you? Aren't you a little worn out? If I weren't so wired, I'd collapse. Right here, on the sidewalk. He wiped one of his eyes. But I don't think I'll make it until the 10 o'clock news. Yeah, I'm kind of wondering if I will. Todd walked over to the Channel 10 van, which was parked halfway up on the sidewalk, and climbed into the passenger seat. He sat there for a moment, rubbing his face with both hands, then reached for a thermos on the dashboard and poured himself a cup of coffee. Taking a swig, he frowned, for it tasted like lukewarm, acidic brown something. But he was tired and in need of a jolt, and so he took a large gulp. Next, he reached for the mobile phone, called the station, and dialed up his voicemail. There were 2 messages. Please, he prayed, let one of them be from him. Hi, doll, came the voice of his West Coast agent Stella on the first message. You're amazing, totally amazing. How do you get yourself into these things anyway? I'm so glad you're all right, and I'm so glad you were there. I mean, doll, do you have any idea what this is going to do for your career? Do you? If they don't already, then everyone in the country is going to know who you are by bedtime tonight. You were absolutely fabulous on the CNN spot this afternoon, and it's been repeating every half hour on headline news. Oh my God, it's just too great. This is going to make you rich, and don't worry, I'm going to milk this for all it's worth. We won't screw up like Wolf Blitzer did after all that Middle East stuff. He could be a real biggie on the networks by now, but instead, doll, it's going to be you. Congrats. Call me when you get a few. Todd shook his head, rolled his eyes. Had Stella doll just seen him on Dan Rather? Would his outing himself on one of the major networks cause his worth to go up or in fact drop a few $100,000? He hit a button on the phone and deleted the message. Who cared? What he really wanted was news from Rawlins. Where the hell had he been all afternoon? Todd had left numerous messages at Rawlins' home number, on his voicemail at work, and even on Todd's own answering machine, just in case he returned to the condo. But so far, Todd hadn't word one from him, nor had he found anyone who'd seen him or spoken to him all day. Could something have happened at the doctor's? Could he have been in an accident? So, when would it be time to panic? Todd listened to the next message, left only moments ago. "Holy shit, Todd," came Janice's voice from Santa Fe. "I'm still down here in Santa Fe, and we just saw you on CNN. Thank God you're all right. I mean, you looked fine, but I'm sure you're a wreck." He grinned slightly. Perhaps no one knew him better than his old college girlfriend, Janice Gray, the self-described lipstick lesbian lawyer. "Take care, sweetheart," continued her recorded voice. "We're all thinking of you, and please, please be careful. Just don't go pulling any of your usual stunts, all right? Call when you get a chance. Love to you and Rawlins." Todd smiled, hung up, then frowned. Where the hell was Rawlins anyway? Grabbing his briefcase from the back, he jumped out of the van, went over to Bradley, and said, "Listen, I have to take off for a while." "What?" replied Bradley as he finished packing up his camera. "There's something I gotta check on." "But you don't have a car. How are—" "Taxi," said Todd, half turning and starting quickly down the sidewalk. "If anyone asks, tell them I'll be out at the station in an hour. Hour and a half, okay?" Sure." If he was going to hunt down Rawlins, the first place Todd would have to start was the last place he'd seen him, the condo. With all good intents, I thought I'd feel nothing but relief once Kurt died. I thought I'd feel nothing but a kind of happiness for helping him out of here. Instead, he's beginning to haunt me. I'm in a store and I hear someone coughing away, and then Kurt's hacking starts echoing in my ears. I close my eyes to try and block it out, and I see the blood dribbling from his ears. I start crying, and then I hear him moaning with pain. Worst of all, and this is really the pits, I don't think I'll ever enjoy sex again because Kurt has crept in there, right into my secret fantasies. To be perfectly frank, I'm having trouble getting a hard on because instead of visualizing gorgeous men, all I can see is Kurt's emaciated body. It was so gross looking at him, so awful to put on a happy face, be all smiley and up when all I wanted was to run the hell away. What did he lose in the end? 50, 60 pounds? How many times did the shit and the blood come oozing out his ass and all over the bed? About a gazillion, actually. Crap, I wish I'd get plowed over by a Mack truck. This could be something like post-traumatic stress syndrome. It could be plain old guilt. Instead, I'm afraid it's reality. My reality. For all this, I never imagined killing anyone. Certainly not two people. But as time ticks by, tick, pause, tick, pause. Which is to say, things are really dragging around here. It's becoming all too clear. That's right. Time for another cyanide cocktail. I'm going to have to play bartender to the devil once again, just so I can fulfill my darkest fantasy. Care for a drop-dead nightcap, darling? After all, by command of his highest honcho, the almighty God, ain't no one getting out of here alive. A Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold: to offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides, and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.